Hi, welcome in. I actually didn't really want to do this as a live stream. I was hoping to do it as a video, and I was going to assemble a lot of the material that I was talking about here and put it together in like a more assembled, spliced together video with evidence, but part of that involves just a lot of effort that I don't have the energy for right now, and also the upload time takes forever here, and I've noticed now that I can live stream, it's great. I can do my video, then it's there. There's not this big waiting for it to upload and all that. So I'm just gonna do this live, even though it's not as polished maybe as I want it to be. I put a lot of thought into this before doing this, so it's probably not going to be very long. I'm not going to pull a lot of cards, maybe just one or two at the end. I'm doing this mainly for my safety, because I've become concerned, and I have enough evidence at this point that I'm planning to kind of move forward to do some things to protect myself, but someone's been trying to steal my identity. And so, you know, big surprise, that happens all the time, right? It happens everywhere. But I'm concerned about it because I think that there have been people in my family that are involved, possibly. I don't really know. And so I'm going to put all the evidence out here that I have in this live stream so that it's assembled somewhere that's my space, that's my channel, that's my stuff, right? Where I'm allowed to say things, I'm allowed to speculate, I'm allowed to wonder, and I can put it all in this place where I have it as a reference. And also, this is to protect myself, I just have to say, because I'm now going to be raising the alarm that I think someone's trying to steal my identity. So this is the first step in that. And I've already talked about it, so if you've been watching my channel, you'll know something about this already, because I've already been kind of addressing this in some readings, because I finally was just like, look, I don't know what this is, but I need to say something about it in case this person really is trying to steal my identity, right? So there's a person out there named Cynthia Vogel. She's been kind of paralleling my life since around 2014. I can't really find any evidence of her online prior to 2014. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but it seems like it's been going on for that long in this way that's kind of just been going on in the background. And I noticed it recently, I would say within the last couple of years, because I do a Google search for myself periodically to just make sure I don't have a lot of identifying information about myself out there, just for my safety and my privacy. And I did that one day a couple of years ago and came across this other Cynthia Vogel on Instagram and in the therapy world. She had just graduated with her degree in social work. So I'm like, that's kind of weird. This person has a lot in common with me. Not only that, she's a visual artist, and her name is not that common. So that was a little bit of a red flag for me, and I started looking into her. Like, is this someone trying to steal my identity? Because also on her Instagram, there were followers of her that were names from my family. Like, one of her followers' names was Rhonda Lee, and I'm like, well, that's weird. That's my sister's name. Then there was another follower, and the person's last name was Chriswell, which was another sister's ex-husband's last name. So I'm like, what is this? What is this? Because this is not me. This is some other person. She's like 10 years younger than me, if not more. And so I just started looking into it, but then it seemed like, well, she does seem like she might be a real person, and maybe this is just a fluke. There's a lot of stuff indicating that she might be real. On her Instagram, the university where she graduated with her social work degree, like, went on there and congratulated her. And when I went to their page, it looks like a legitimate university. Paranoid. End of story. So now, but I've been kind of watching it and tracking it just in case, because if it is a long game identity theft scam or ring of some kind, I need to be watching out for that. So I've been sort of letting it go, but simultaneously just trying to take some steps to make sure that my identity is secure, right? Recently, I got curious again. This is now a separate track because I was married to a person whose father was in the FBI and was involved in investigating organized crime in Chicago before he ended up leaving the FBI and going into some other work. But he's open about that. That's not a secret. His name is Remo Melchiori Jr. He served in Vietnam. He went to West Point. He was an officer in the Vietnam era conflict. He did some covert ops. And then when he came out, he ended up working for the FBI for a time. And he was investigating Sam Giancana, okay, in Chicago. Sometimes I get curious because I think his background is really interesting. And so I know that I knew peripherally that he had had some involvement with investigating organized crime, but I didn't know a ton about it. I knew more about his combat service. So I Googled his name again recently because I was like, I wonder if there's anything out there about that investigation, because I was curious. And there is. His name is in the JFK files. So I'm like, wow, that's cool. You know, I'm just intrigued and interested. I'm not with his son anymore, but I'm interested still in this just because I'm interested in U.S. history and whatnot. So I'm looking in these released National Archive declassified FBI files. Well, whose name should be in there but a man named Eddie Vogel? And I'm like, whoa, that's weird. Eddie Vogel. My last name is Vogel. Right? And I'm like, this is a trip. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but who's Eddie Vogel? I got curious about who was Eddie Vogel to Sam Giancana, because apparently Eddie Vogel and Sam Giancana were part of the outfit in Chicago. Eddie Vogel was a Jewish person, and he and his family, who were involved in ushering in slot machines and that era of gambling and everything. I'm not a specialist in organized crime, okay? I don't know anything about this really very much other than what I've seen in the movies and on The Sopranos and shit, right? Like, I'm not Italian. I'm not even Irish. I'm German. I'm Vogel. My last name's Vogel. And I remember growing up, I asked my dad multiple times, were we Jewish? Did we have Jewish ancestry? And he's like, no. He was adamant. No, we're not Jewish. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just curious. We look kind of Jewish, I thought, because we were German, but we were swarthy. Like Jewish people often are. If they were German, they looked swarthy, right? And we had swarthy features. So I was like, we seem like we might be Jewish. And my dad was just like, no, we're not Jewish. Let it go. Okay. But my dad was really interested in genealogy. So he did research into the Vogel line. We go back to the Alsace-Lorraine area in Ukraine, near the Black Sea. I've done other stuff on my channel about this, right? So I'm like, whoa, that is wild. Eddie Vogel. So as I'm reading about Eddie Vogel, I'm reading about the fact that he had a kid in Arizona that he would go visit. And so as I'm looking more and more into this, I'm like, am I related to Eddie Vogel? Okay, I'm just going to I'm going to explore it. I doubt it, but maybe I am. The Vogels were a large family. My grandpa Vogel, Joe, had a lot of siblings. And some of them were half. They weren't all full siblings. There were halves in there. So I'm getting lost now in all of this because there's so many moving parts to the story that I'm overwhelmed by it. I can't, and it maybe isn't anything, but I'm looking at these notes. Okay. So Eddie Vogel, back to Eddie Vogel. I'm reading about Eddie Vogel online, just wherever I can find information about him over the last few days. And it turns out that he went by Dutch. He went by the nickname Dutch. And I'm like, I had an Uncle Dutch. What the fuck? My dad had an Uncle Dutch. It wasn't my uncle. It was my dad's uncle, I guess. So it'd be my great uncle, maybe. And so but according to what I found online, it's not clear what happened to Eddie Vogel. I found one little snippet somewhere that said Eddie Vogel retired in San Diego. I don't know if that's true or not. I can't find anything else about where he is or what came of Eddie Vogel. For a long time, they said that Sam Giancana, it was unknown for a while where he was too and all that, right? So there's just a lot of, so I'm like, was Uncle Dutch Eddie Vogel? Like, I'm bugging out at this point, right? Like, reading about this is just recent over the last couple days. So I started trying to figure out who is Uncle Dutch, and I don't know. I reached out to my aunt, but I haven't talked to her in a few years, and I don't know how she's doing. I don't even know if I have her right email anymore. So the more I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, well, that's weird because Sam Giancana had a very long-term, passionate love affair with a woman named Patricia McGuire from the McGuire Sisters, which was a known musical act at that time. My stepmom, who my dad married briefly after my biological mom, Donita Schneider, died, my dad married a woman briefly from the time I was age 3 until I think at age 6 is when the divorce was final. So that would have been 73 to 77 or 78, something like that. Around there are the years. I haven't sat down and like broken this all down. It's all in my ancestry. But I just went and set my ancestry to private because I was going in there. I hadn't done a deep dig in my ancestry in a long time. I go in there, sure enough, there's fuck shit going on in my ancestry page because it was public. There are other people putting things into my ancestry that don't belong there. So today I was in there deleting stuff out, deleting inaccurate shit out of there, correcting things, reporting things that to me felt blatantly inaccurate, and saying I'm concerned that my identity is being stolen or attempting to be stolen, so I'm reporting all of these concerns to you. And then I set my ancestry to private and blocked a couple people that were involving themselves and without identifying who they are. So that's another thing. So I'm like, okay, so Michaela Helen McGuire, my stepmom, her mother's name was Patty and Patricia. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is Mickey Patricia's daughter, or is Mickey Sam Giancana's daughter? Like, I don't think so, because Mickey had like a bunch of different last names and it's all over it. She married multiple times. There's all kinds of what I think is evidence of trying to conceal or hide her identity in Ancestry, because she has like 7 different last names listed in Ancestry. On my birth certificate, her full name is listed as Michaela Helen McGuire. Sorry, I'm all over the place. And so I don't know how this all comes together. But all I know is that my ex's dad was investigating Ray Giancana and Eddie Vogel at one point. Eddie Vogel went by Dutch. I had an uncle named Dutch. Okay, so these are very bizarre intersections happening in my life. I think these are covering them all. The other thing that stands out to me is that my dad was in the wine and spirits industry. Okay, so he wrote an op-ed. I vividly remember him writing an op-ed when Mothers Against Drug Driving came out, and they were really whipping up a lot of concern about drunk driving and alcohol abuse and whatever. And my dad wrote an op-ed. Like, this is a lot like the teetotaling movement that led to prohibition. And he basically came out in favor of the industry, saying, I'm speaking from the industry. And I even remember the headline. It said, an industry perspective. And it was my dad's editorial in the Columbian, talking about how this aggressive campaign against drunk driving shouldn't reflect poorly on the wine and spirits industry. This is very ATF, okay? To me, all of these things are kind of starting to come together. My dad brewed beer. My dad was super into distillation. My dad had a cop in the family. My dad's best friend was Ernie Battalato, who was Sicilian. Okay, these are all kinds of weird intersections that I'm like, I think my dad had his elders were part of organized crime, I think. And now, potentially, there may be descendants related to these players that don't want me to know that, or that are trying to make sure that my family, not just me, but any Vogels that I'm connected to don't know that. Maybe because Eddie Vogel had other relatives, maybe because I saw that he died very wealthy. That's what it said somewhere online. So my Uncle Dutch, that I remember, because I was around him until I was about 3 when he died, he was poor. So that doesn't add up. It's like, well, my Uncle Dutch wasn't living wealthy. He was poor, like very poor, like extremely tiny little hovel kind of home. And I remember being in there with my dad, and my dad trying to help him. And there was all this bustle and commotion of like checking on Uncle Dutch and going over to Uncle Dutch's Grandpa Joe's brother, right? Like all this stuff. Okay, so these are, I don't know how it all comes together, but I think that might be everything. Because then I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't Eddie Vogel. Maybe my relative is our family's relative is William Vogel, and maybe William Vogel dated one of the other sisters, right? Of those, because that wouldn't be that weird, right? Like, why am I blanking on her last name? All this. Oh, McGuire. So maybe William and Eddie both dated McGuire sisters, right? I don't know. I'm not sure how this all comes together. My stepmother, Mickey, died back in the 90s. I never saw her again. My dad paid her off. She was trying to get custody of me from my dad, but she was extremely abusive. She was a severe alcoholic. I would not be surprised at all if there was some type of organized crime stuff that was happening around my family that none of us knew about, because we were shielded from it or something. And it wasn't my dad. I think it was maybe his elders. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought again. It's because I'm so rattled by this. I don't know what to make of all of it. But I found the stationery. This was the other thing. I was going through some keepsakes of mine, and I found the stationery, and I'm like, United Factors Retail Service Corp. This is old, right? This is from like 1980. I'm like, who's that, right? Who's United Factors Retail Service Corporation in San Mateo County? I'm going to look that up just out of curiosity. So I look it up, and discerning like who owned that company, when did that company start, why would my dad have the stationery, right? Well, it turns out there was this other Vietnam era Special Forces Army, or he was a Green Beret, I guess. His name was Perkins. His last name was Perkins. He was one of the founders of this company. I think my dad intersected with this guy at some point when he was dating Mickey, or married to Mickey. I think maybe he started investigating my dad to see if my dad was harboring organized crime money, because my dad was audited multiple times. My dad did very well for himself financially. He ended up, when he died, he was a multimillionaire. He owned 2 apartment complexes. It was always our understanding that he made all that money himself, and I think it was possible. I mean, he made a really good living at Great Western Malting. But there's this big question too, because now, like, Phyllis McGuire, who died not long ago, I think a few years ago, is like so wealthy, it's insane. And it's like, well, she couldn't be wealthy just from her career as the McGuire sisters. So I speculate that Sam Giancana gave her a lot of money, right? A lot of money. And she found a way to launder it, possibly. I don't know, right? Like, I don't know what any of this is. But this Perkins guy was like, this Perkins dude that started this company, I wouldn't be surprised if he knew Ray Melchiorri, and they were he was aiding Melchiorri in investigating possibly my dad, maybe, and if there was any legacy of laundered mob money being passed into my family now through Eddie Vogel's descendants. I honestly don't know. These are theories I'm floating. The other confusing thing is that some of these people seem to be intersecting with the law tube thing that I stumbled into, and I have no idea how that happened or why that would be. Truly, I don't know. But there are pictures of the CynthiaVogel out there online, the one that I think is now more and more all the time, I think was something set up to steal my identity. One of her pictures on X seems linked to Hella, Excited Utterance, but I don't know. And I don't know whether that would be even possible. It's just stuff that I don't understand any of this. It's really freaking me out. Before I sat down to do this, I felt sick with just exhaustion and mental confusion, because when I first was like, I'll tell you, like 3 days ago when I was looking at my old father-in-law's name and saw that his name was in the JFK files, and I was like, ooh, exciting, intriguing. I was like any other person, just thinking how exciting and intriguing that is, right? This is all declassified now. I want to read about it. I had no idea he was involved in investigating Ray Giancana. I had no clue, right? And I had no idea that there was a mobster named Eddie Vogel. I didn't know any of that. So to see my last name in those papers, I was like, what the fuck? And then to hear this Perkins name and the way it all intersects, I don't know what any of it means. I don't know. And I'm a little overwhelmed and kind of scared because I've been suspecting for a while that someone was trying to steal my identity. And now that I came across this information, I'm like, well, I don't want to be grandiose about this. I think it's very bizarre though, and I don't understand how all the worlds come together. But I also think there's one other thing that I wanted to add that I think I got off track about. I would not be surprised at all if some of these warring factions at the time around all of this mob money, because there were multiple different ethnicities of gangs, Irish gangs, Jewish gangs, and Italian gangs in Chicago that were all working together in this outfit, right? But they were also, there were often infighting and warring and shit, right? So one thing that I wondered about is if something went wrong around Eddie Vogel and Sam Giancana to the point that my family attracted the ire of Irish gangs, because Nikki, my stepmom, did nothing but create massive destruction in my family. And so it's like, just, was that by design? Was she sent to my family to enact revenge as an Irish gang? Okay, I don't know. I do know that my dad's best friend had Sicilian ties, and he didn't hide that necessarily. And so I'm like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know any of it. There's an interview out there though that with Phyllis McGuire talking about her relationship with Sam Giancana, and saying at one point that when they were in Italy together, he specifically said he didn't want to go to Sicily, but he didn't get into why. So I have no clue what any of this means, but I'm putting it out there in part because I'm scared. I feel like someone's trying to steal my identity, potentially because if they see me as a descendant in some way to this wealth, that I'm a danger to them. Because I think there's a lot of wealth that we're talking about, especially if it's something like Phyllis McGuire's wealth. That's out there and it's known. She has this massive mansion in Vegas. She ran with the Rat Pack and stuff. So I don't know what any of this means. I don't know how, if at all, my Nikki, Michaela, Helen McGuire is related to the McGuire sisters. It's all very suspect. And there's a lot of things within Ancestry itself that seem by design created to be suspicious, to create confusion, to throw people off the scent, because if there's a bunch of wealth involved, that's going to happen. And I've heard of that happening in other scenarios, not even related to me. Never in my million years would I have ever thought something like this could be happening to me, and I don't even know that it is. So I've heard about that though from other people, that if you like, you'll do your DNA and then find out that you have this wealthy relative, and their wealthy relatives that do know they're related are like, fuck no, you're not coming anywhere near us because you don't want to claim, we don't want you to think you have a claim to our wealth. It's possible that there's something like that going on here, where they don't want our family to discover these ties, potentially, biologically, to Eddie Vogel and Sam Giancana's money, okay? And possibly legal money through legal gambling, through slot machines and whatnot. I mean, it was corrupt, right? But not illegal. So, I don't know. I'm going to just leave it there. I tell you what, though, I'm not going to stop investigating this. I'm obsessed. Like, I haven't stopped all day. I've been just going and going and going and going and going and going. And I have plans for what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, to keep going, to keep investigating, to keep trying to get to the bottom of this, because I think it's really weird. And I'm sorry that I'm so in the dark. I wish it was brighter. I mainly just wanted to do this so that I could have this record uploaded and named here, and the basics jotted down. There's so much more that I haven't even included that I'm trying to just assemble, with links, with names, with timelines, with... I've got to find some place to assemble this all in an organized way, because it's so much information. I don't even know how to deal with this, honestly. So I'm just saying, if there's somebody out there trying to steal my identity or going to try to harm me about something like this, here's all this evidence out here. I've just named it. I don't know what any of it means. I went from kind of excited, like, oh my God, could I be related to a former organized criminal? To like real fear and concern and feeling sick with overwhelm. Like, I'm mentally exhausted, and yet I can't turn my mind off because I've just been spinning over this. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave it there. I see some people in the chat. I think it's just people saying hi. Thank you for watching, everybody. Hi. Okay, bye, Gary. Bye. Hi, Stella. I do believe in God. Thank you for asking. So I think that's about it. I think I'm just going to leave this alone now, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.